Welcome to part 3 of Path of Exile 1 lore you need to know for Path of Exile 2. This video overviews the essential endgame story lore from Path of Exile 1, drawing out all the high-level details. If you missed parts 1 and 2, they are linked in the description. Like the video if you end up liking it, and subscribe for more unique Path of Exile 2 content just like this. There are 5 true eras to Path of Exile 1's endgame story, and they all revolve around an idea called the Atlas. This system returns in Path of Exile 2, although we're not quite sure how the narrative evolves around it. First, let me catch you up on the pentet of endgame stories, then pull the most important details from each for Path of Exile 2. Atlas of Worlds. Our Exile's tale begins in the endgame in the Atlas of Worlds expansion. It introduces the first real chapter to the game's endgame narrative, centering around a corrupted, otherworldly series of planes and star realms known as the Atlas. At first, it's a mystery. Is it a realm in the stars? Is it a world constructed of dreams? Is it a series of locales right here on Rayclast? No matter what it is, we access it using an eldritch tool of engineering and thaumaturgy known as the map device. And inside this Atlas of Worlds are maps rife with powerful monsters, treasures, and reflections of our very own reality. Succinctly, we place a map into the map device, and it brings us into the Atlas of Worlds. Us, the exiles, guided by Zana, the master cartographer, begin exploring the Atlas to uncover its secrets. Before the Atlas was brought to the game, we worked with the Forsaken Master Zana via the map device to clear rudimentary forms of maps, with no broader system or lore justification for them all to be wrapped together. The Atlas of Worlds was that justification. The map device used to enter it was a creation of Zana's father, Valdo Caesarius, and after poring over his old notes and mappings of the Atlas in the Templar laboratory in Oriath, she was determined to discover what his research really meant. As we initially explore the Atlas, we quickly meet a foul entity called the Shaper. The Shaper is a powerful entity who seemingly created and controls the Atlas. He manipulates the worlds within it, warping reality to suit his will. Though initially enigmatic, it is revealed that his motivations are linked to his descent into madness due to the overwhelming influence of the Atlas, an influence Zana constantly warns us about. As we progress through the Atlas, we encounter increasingly dangerous challenges designed by the Shaper, and slowly learn about the involvement of the Templars' restoration of the map device and exploration of the Atlas. They knew some dark power lurked within, but anyone who ventured into the maps placed among the vast Atlas slowly descended into madness, and they were ultimately consumed by said insanity. The pieces swiftly come together, and Zana realizes the Shaper of Worlds is not the creator of the Atlas. This mad, tentacled man, confused and ruling over the Atlas currently, is her father she thought dead, Valdo Caesarius. This man was a genius of Oriath, forced by an old leader of the Order of the Templar, High Templar Venarius, to re-engineer the map device and begin the exploration of the Atlas, until he was eventually trapped within. Zana is determined to help restore his sanity or put him at rest, gathering memory fragments of Valdo and sourcing the catalyst of his unsane mind. As we collect these fragments, we also decipher a partial source to her father's madness and missing thoughts, a being of decay we name the Elder. This creature, an abomination of eldritch designs, lurks within and beyond the Atlas, seeking a way into it and Rayclast through the unhinged musings of the Shaper. This beyond ancient creature was once fought by a primeval sect called the Watchers of Decay, a group of Asmerians who were warned of the Elder by an unnamed goddess in the days of old. Remember, the Asmerians are the tribal predecessors of the Eternal Empire. Even scouring her father's storied laboratory, little could be found by Zana on these creatures, but details of the Elder and its horrific destruction of young humans and anything it could feast upon, including memories, were well explained. In particular, it seems to have devoured the Shaper's memories of Zana in particular, tearing a father forever away from his daughter. For Zana, we down 4 guardians of the Shaper. Pupils of his succumbed to both the madness of the Atlas and the teachings of the Shaper. Then we venture alongside Zana into the Shaper's realm for a direct confrontation with Valdo Caesarius, or what remains of him. Unfortunately, even confronted directly by Zana with his memories, the Shaper does not recognize his daughter, does not overcome the insanity induced on him by the Atlas and the Elder. We battle him, avoiding beams of pure cosmic force and slams of thaumaturgical might before chasing him into the ether. He is banished for now. War for the Atlas. The endgame story of Path of Exile 1 builds with the War for the Atlas expansion, bringing a conflict between us, the Shaper, and the Elder to the game. Finally, in-game, we put a face to the name of the Elder, invading the Atlas and consuming what it can in service of its Dark Master, Decay. The Elder, this nightmarish cosmic entity, seeks to consume its worlds and enslave their inhabitants. No map is safe, no being shall survive it. All shall be brought under decay. Unlike the Shaper, who shaped the Atlas with some level of purpose before, the Elder represents unbridled destruction and chaos. Zana, still reeling from her father's corruption and banishment, discovers the Elder's intrusion into the Atlas, then brings us into the fold. She becomes increasingly desperate to stop the Elder, as it threatens not only the Atlas, but also the physical world. We must re-enter the Atlas and chase down the Elder, hopefully killing it for good. While we search for the Elder, we discover that the Shaper has returned in full and is warring with his armies against the Elder. Their influence wanes and waxes as we venture through the Atlas, with greater influence possibly destabilizing the Atlas and risking either entity's re-entrance into Rayclast itself. Us exiles, of course, are drawn into the war, working to push back the Elder's spreading corruption while contending with the Shaper's lingering threats. We are forced to balance our efforts, strategically managing the Atlas to weaken the Elder's grip and ultimately confront both entities. The Shaper for a second time, and the Elder for the first time. When we finally defeat the Elder's twisted guardians, we reach its decrepit realm through a portal in the old Templar laboratory in Oriath. This place is called the Absence of Value and Meaning, a locale seemingly out of time and space, perhaps the home of the Elder's master, Decay. The first leg of the fight sees us sweeping around the Elder as it bites at us and swings huge tentacles our way, while the second sends forth the Shaper. He helps us thrust the Elder away from this wretched place. Altogether, us, Zana, and the Shaper drive the Elder from the Atlas for a time, until a second minor expansion to the War for the Atlas in the Bestiary League adds the Uber Elder encounter and closes out the Elder story almost for good. Zana armed with a new artifact, the Arcana, we discover the Elder and Shaper together, the Elder in full control of the Shaper. We battle them at the same time in the Shaper's realm, putting the Shaper to peace and banishing the Elder and seemingly its master, Decay. The encounter changes Zana. It's bittersweet as her father is now gone, but at rest. Regardless, she encourages us to continue our study of the Atlas, as long as we can keep our sanity while blasting maps and the monsters within. We must stay sane as exiles. Conquerors of the Atlas. Well, the Conquerors of the Atlas expansion changes everything with the endgame narrative in Path of Exile 1. First, it removes the Shaper-Elder conflict and most of the associated lore, only the boss battle lore and dialogue with Zana remaining present. Second, it changes a new group of exiles, a band called the Elder Slayers, to the people who helped Zana banish the Elder and put the Shaper to rest. When we reach Endgame after downing Kitava, we meet a man named Kirak who is looking to find his brother Baron. He was working with Zana in the Templar laboratory. We investigate the lab and discover a broken map device within, leading us to the Vault of Venarius in Oriath, which keeps another map device hidden. We find it, take it to our hideout, and activate it with the help of Kirak. We begin searching maps for Baron, but eventually encounter Zana, who in this version of the narrative we're meeting for the first time. We learn she tried to trap herself in the Elder Slayers, now called the Conquerors of the Atlas, within the Atlas. They, much like her father Valdo, went mad within the Atlas, grew in strength so greatly that she feared for the world, so she tried to keep them within the confines of this dream world, the Atlas. Us, now coming in, have ruined her plan. Alongside her, we then march across the Atlas of Worlds, finding and fighting each of the Elder Slayers, culminating in a fight against the Awakener of Worlds, Cirrus, the leader of the Elder Slayers and love interest of Zana. During their fight with the Elder, Cirrus seemingly made the ultimate sacrifice, and wherever the Elder was banished to, he seemed to face those same cosmos, and it broke him. Each of the Elder Slayers seems corrupted in a different manner, their worst traits made more sinister by the Atlas itself, as seen through the journals of them we find while fighting them. Baron, the Crusader, was obsessed with divine righteousness. Drox, the Warlord, was driven by unyielding discipline and militaristic ideals. Veritania, the Redeemer, was detached and nihilistic, seeking purity through annihilation. El Hasmin, the Hunter, was overwhelmed by a primal and predatory instinct. Then Cirrus, Awakener of Worlds, was the most powerful and corrupted, now a godlike figure bent on reshaping all of reality. Our battle against Cirrus does not occur in the Atlas, but in the Oriath Square, as Cirrus breaks out of the Atlas and seeks to bring utter destruction to Rayclast itself. Zana and Kirik attempt to assist us, but Cirrus brands Kirik forever and retreats deeper into Oriath. We give chase, fight the deadly exile, and slay him. At the battle's end, Zana portals in and apologizes to the disintegrated Cirrus, hinting toward a possible tragedy in his fall. The Conquerors of the Atlas were reflections of not only the exiles of the story before this expansion, but the players themselves. They were a play on how we become entranced in the game of Path of Exile 1, especially its endgame, and keep coming back for more and more. This was also a brief break from the Eldritch Entity storyline, which was only just getting started with the Elder and Decay. Echoes of the Atlas. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion in Path of Exile 1 continues the saga of the Atlas and introduces a new cosmic entity, the Maven, who adds a needed layer of odd complexity to the lore of eldritch forces in the game. This edition exists in parallel with the Conquerors of the Atlas, with the Maven appearing as we were searching for Baron and the rest of the Conquerors. However, she comes not alone. An enigmatic being called the Envoy accompanies her. We discover the Maven is a fledgling being, something from a faraway world who has come to the Atlas to play and learn. She witnesses our fights as the Envoy ensures she is not hurt as to not anger her progenitor, and lead them toward the Atlas and our world. She observes us slay the most powerful beasts and maps, empowering them with her odd gifts, and she collects them, brings them to a starscape encased in gold called the Maven's Crucible. Herein, we fight these powerful creatures all at once for her entertainment, as she beckons us to bring her more. We abide, and the more we bring, the more interested in us she becomes until she beckons us to do battle with her. We concede and fight the Maven, who reveals the feminine form we've always seen her as is not her true form, but a projection. She is truly a Lovecraftian abomination, far more terrifying than the Elder ever was. We fend her off in combat, dodging lasers and playing games of pure memory. Yet, as she truly begins to become injured, the Envoy brushes us off, protects her, and warns us. If we were to truly harm the Maven, her progenitor's arrival would be swift. The Maven's cry would echo across the vast mists, and a being of unfathomable power would arrive. And they were already coming. It was only a matter of how long until they'd arrive. Siege of the Atlas. Well, the progenitor of the Maven does not arrive in the current endgame story of Path of Exile 1, the Siege of the Atlas, but 4 other eldritch entities do. And with their arrival, the Conquerors of the Atlas story is replaced and their lore is once again mostly retired alongside that of the Elder and Shaper, with fight dialogue still available in their associated boss battles and story journals. Even though Siege of the Atlas is a replacement to the interesting story of the Conqueror's narrative, it unfortunately doesn't expand the lore nearly as much, and it shows. Again, once we down Kitava, we experience a 1-year time skip. In that time, 3 huge events happen. The Conquerors of the Atlas break free from the Atlas, Cirrus destroys Oriath, and a lone exile downs him but suffers a terrible fate. Zana vanishes, imposing exile upon herself. And Kirak becomes a commander and establishes the Citizens' Vanguard in the Karui Archipelago, dedicated to being the anti-Order of the Templar. The Conquerors are no more, Zana is gone, and Kirak is using the map device and being very transparent about what is found within to the public, and what's discovered quite quickly is an invasion from afar. As we begin our exploration of the Atlas, the Envoy and Maven meet with us. The Envoy explains that the Maven's progenitor is not here, but other eldritch beings are, servants of the Cleansing Flame and the Tangle. They give us two odd objects to draw these entities in and find them, the Luminous Astrolabe and the Flesh Compass. With the help of him and the Maven, we must banish them from the Atlas, else they claim it for their own masters, much like the Elder tried to do for the Decay long ago. We rally with the Maven and battle the lieutenants of these two powerful eldritch servants. We slay them both and venture through more maps, eventually leading us to two pinnacle encounters in worlds away from the Atlas, deep within the void. First, we duel the Searing Exarch, servant of the Cleansing Flame, in the absence of patience and wisdom. Its symbology is oddly reminiscent of the death cry used by the Order of the Templar. Then we match up against the Eater of Worlds, minion of the Tangle, in the absence of symmetry and harmony. This creature of pure hunger is no match for us. Both of them defeated, we convene with Kirak and prepare for yet another wave to come soon. After all, these were but lackeys of more powerful beings out there eager to feast upon the Atlas and the world connected to it. As long as we can stay sane within its confines, we are good to continue battling within, fighting reflections of past foes, collecting immeasurable power, and visiting the absence of mercy and empathy where the Maven waits to seek her help. All that being said, what pieces of this lore should we definitely remember for Path of Exile 2? As someone with no spoilers for the endgame, I posit there are 3 things to draw from here. Sorry, none of them involve the Eldritch entities. The first is the Atlas itself. We know Path of Exile 2's endgame consists of the Atlas, but is it the Atlas we explore in Path of Exile 1? The Eldritch entity story seems to be gone as an outsider looking in, but given the name remains the same between the 2 games, it appears the Atlas itself is here to stay. This is the way we access realms of dreams, somehow real but intangible. It inspires madness in all but the most stoic. Not even powerful denizens can overcome its insanity, like the father of Zana Caesarius. And she is the second thing to keep in mind. Everyone is wondering what happened to Zana during Siege of the Atlas. She has always been a vital part to Path of Exile 1's endgame up until Siege of the Atlas, when she departed from the story, with the only hint of where she's gone being in the trailer for the expansion. Until Settlers of Kalgur, where it's discovered Zana and an engineer in Kingsmarch, Isla, are writing to each other about map devices being built in Kingsmarch. And that's the third thing. The map device. This feat of thaumaturgy and engineering recrafted by Baldo Caesarius and seemingly imagined by many geniuses in times before the present. This is, again, how we enter the Atlas, and these map devices seem to only be in the possession of the most talented of thaumaturges and engineers in Rayclast. Somehow, these 3 must all be related. The Atlas shall return. Zana shall return, either as an ally or a jaded villain, and the map device shall, too, return, albeit in a very different context in a very different time. I'll not leave much speculation in this video, but there is a ton to learn about and talk about here once Path of Exile 2 arrives. Next up, we close out the Path of Exile 2 lore prep series with an overview of Path of Exile 1 League lore you need to know for Path of Exile 2. From Breach to the Forbidden Sanctum. Then, hopefully before Path of Exile 2 launches, I will get an analysis of the early access or opening cinematic to Path of Exile 2 out there for all you lore enjoyers. Once Part 4 is out, we're finished for the lore you need to know for Path of Exile 2. Is there anything else players need to know about the Path of Exile 1's lore? Please let me know if I'm missing something. If you like this video, like it and subscribe to Talkative Try for more Path of Exile 2 content. I'll see you in the next video. Stay sane, my fellow exiles.